Starting on slide 2, we have expanded the number of assumptions from the original model from 17 to 30. The original model was geared toward managers, but as we added frontline workers, support staff, CEOs, board of directors, etc., and as we introduced new concepts, the number of assumptions increased as well. For the rest of this session, I will comment on the assumptions as you read the assumptions here on the slide. And you're free to stop and start and replay the slide as much as you need in order to get the message. Okay, first and second assumptions. Sense of coherence suggests that we view ourselves, others, and the world around us as all somehow fitting together. If the world has a sense of coherence, it makes sense. There is something that makes it make sense, something that gives it purpose, meaning, and consequently, the decisions made will more likely from such a person will tend to be consistent from one time to the next. Additionally, we all have a set of beliefs about ourselves, the world, and others. And to the extent that we have a sense of coherence is the extent to which we act in a way that is consistent with those beliefs. However, if life does not make sense, that it is just a series of random events over which we have little or no control, the more likely we will make more random decisions based on the situation and circumstances at the time. Consequently, consistency suffers. There is no real way to know if such a person's judgments and actions will be consistent from one time to the next, or if their actions will be consistent with their expressed beliefs. The third assumption. In reference to Kohlberg's ethics model, most people don't think about ethical issues very deeply or for very long. Most people find that functioning at stage 3, being considered a good person, good employee, etc., or 4, obeying the law and the rules, is good enough to get by in the workplace, so that's where they operate from most of the time. Fourth assumption. The higher the stage of moral development, the more consistency there is between a person's moral judgment and moral action. This same notion applies to high ego strength, internal locus of control, etc. The higher on the scales, the greater consistency there is between judgment and action. The lower on these various scales, the less consistency there is between the judgments and the actions. Okay, the fifth assumption, which is the last one on slide 2, and sixth and seventh assumptions on slide 3. When involved in ethical training, when addressing ethical issues in hypothetical situation, it is easier to wax philosophical. Thinking, judging, and, quote, acting, unquote, on ethical issues in training or contemplating such issues makes taking a principled stance seem to be the best and the most sensible path. However, once forced with the same or similar situations in the real world, taking such a stance is harder, and the conventional level response seems more practical and reasonable. In short, it is easier to think and philosophize about ethics than it is to actually put principles into action. Eighth assumption. Here the concept of primacy enters the picture again. If you have ever believed in something strongly, stood up for what you believed, and got shot down, or was abandoned by those around you, or paid a heavy price for your stance, naturally enough, that will impact how you deal with similar situations in the future. You may not stand up for what you believe if you have determined the cost is too high. You may stand up for what you believe despite the costs, or something in between, or find a way to opt out altogether. In any case, it is best to be aware of your ethical decision making past so that you are aware of what you are making, what you are doing when you are making an ethical decision, and why you are taking the actions that you are. The ninth assumption. As noted earlier, the higher the ego strength, the more consistent you will be with your moral judgment and moral actions. High ego strength people can resist the influence of others to get along. Consequently, they will behave based on their own beliefs. Their behavior is more consistent between their beliefs, judgments, and actions, and they will behave more consistently from one time to the next. The lower ego strength person will not be able to do that. While they may be able to move from their beliefs to a solid judgment, because they are more vulnerable to the influence of others or the desire to please others, they won't be able to make the jump from their judgment to action, especially if it is contrary to what they believe others expect of them. As a result, their judgment and their actions are inconsistent and cannot be relied upon. Understand, this does not mean that the high ego strength person is right. It only means that they are confident in themselves and that they are consistent in the actions that they take. 10th assumption. The field independent person relies more on their own intelligence, experience, and intuition as they assess a situation, make judgments, and take action. They may consider the opinions of and the information from others, but this will be filtered as they decide what to keep and what to ignore. The field-independent person will behave more consistently between their assessment of the situation and the final action they take. On the other hand, the field-dependent person relies more, sometimes much more, on the opinions of and the information that they gain from others. The problem is that there is the inevitable many different opinions. There is contradictory opinions. One person will express their opinion more strongly and more confidently than the other. And as a consequence, it becomes very difficult to pick and choose between all the different choices. With this plethora of choices, without the confidence in their own information or the belief in themselves, high ego strength, it will lead them to confusion, and the person will feel paralyzed by all the choices, or they will end up going with whatever feels right at the time. Slide 4.